Description: in a world where the ancient song of creation has faded into silence, a quiet girl named Elowen hears its echo in the wind. Drawn by forgotten harmonies and haunted melodies, she embarks on a journey through whispering forests, star-crowned hills, and the deep places where unspoken stories wait to be heard. As she gathers lost voices and sings broken truths back into being, Elowen must face the sleepless silence, mend the shattered lullaby, and choose whether to finish the world's final thread, or let it remain unmade. A lyrical, mystical tale of memory, becoming, and the quiet power of choosing to listen. Prologue: before the first note. Before stars learned to shine in pattern. Before wind took its name from trees. And long before sleep was ever needed. The world sang. Not with voices, nor with tongues, but with being. Rivers flowed in pitch. Mountains rose in chord. Even silence hummed with intention. In those first days, the song was not known as music. It was truth. And all things moved in its harmony. But as time unspooled like thread from a patient loom, some notes strayed. Not wrongly, but freely. Stories broke off before their ends. Echoes forgot who first called them. Some songs were buried. Others were feared. And so, the world began to forget its melody. It was not sudden. It was not cruel. But it was deep. Even the stars, in their vast remembering, dimmed slightly. Uncertain of the tune they had once been part of. Only a few remembered. A tree whose roots reached beneath memory. A harp, strung with breath instead of string. And one girl, born beneath a sky that flickered oddly, who heard wind speak her name. And listened. Her name was Elowen. She did not set out to change the world. Only to understand the hush beneath it. But the world, you see, hears those who listen. And when a single soul remembers what the stars forgot, the song begins again. Chapter 1: The Whispering Vale. There is a valley far from charted lands, shrouded in mists and old memory, known only in whispers passed from elder to child by hearth fire's glow. Some call it the Whispering Vale, where wind speaks to stone and shadow dreams beneath leaf and loam. Few have found it by will, and fewer still have left it unchanged. It is said that in the year of the 4 moons, when the skies bled silver and stars walked low upon the hills, a child of both day and dusk was born beneath the elder tree of Calmingnarration. Her name was Elowen. Elowen's birth was marked by the soft toll of unseen bells, sounding from within the heart of the earth itself. The villagers, humble folk of moss and thatch, murmured tales of the old ones returning. For the tree beneath which she was born had not bloomed in 100 years, until that night, when it unfurled its silver blossoms like lanterns in the wind. Her mother, Elira, was a weaver of tales and moon thread, and her father, Baron, a quiet man who carved oaken flutes that sang like rivers. They raised Elowen with the gentleness of falling snow and the wisdom of deep-rooted stone. She grew not as other children did. Where others ran, she wandered. Where others chattered, she listened, to the hush of leaves, the murmur of distant waterfalls, and the dreams held in dew. From a young age, she was drawn to the ancient barrows beyond the vale, where stones lay in great circles and the air grew thick with remembrance. There, she would place her hand upon the moss-covered granite and hear something. Not words, exactly. More like the memory of them. As though the wind were remembering songs it once sang before the world was young. Not all who listen hear, her grandmother once whispered, eyes dim with age and wonder. But you, child, you were born in the breath between silence and story. One twilight, when the sky was the color of ripe plum and the stars blinked like drowsy eyes, Elowen heard the call. It came not as a sound, but as a longing, like the pull of a forgotten melody at the edge of waking. She followed it through the winding paths of the vale, her bare feet padding softly upon moss and root, until she stood before the wishing pool. It was said the pool was older than the mountains that cradled it, formed when the moon wept for the first time. Its waters shimmered not with moonlight, but with memory, liquid reflection of all that had been and might be. Elowen gazed into it, and what she saw was not her face but a great forest aflame with starlight, and a figure, tall and crowned with antlers of pearl, waiting beyond the mists. "Who are you?" she breathed. And the pool whispered back, in a voice like rustling pages. "Child of the Vale, seeker of song, the roots of the world call you home. Follow the antlered king, and the veil shall part." When she returned home that night, she spoke not a word, but her eyes glowed with knowing. She spent the next 7 days and nights weaving a cloak of feather and fern, binding it with strands of her own hair and whispers she caught from the trees. On the 8th day, with the rising of the hunter's moon, she kissed her parents goodbye, leaving behind only a flute of alder wood and a note written in the old tongue. I go to find the first song. Chapter 2: The Antlered King. Elowen walked eastward through the thinning woods, where the trees grew tall and watchful. The wind here no longer whispered, it listened. Each step was a hush, each breath a prayer. Beyond the edge of Calmingnarration lay a place seldom charted on any map, for it shifted like dream stuff and answered not to compass or call. The folk of the Vale named it the Gladsome Thorn, though others in older tongues called it Althamar, the Wandering Realm. It was said to be where the veil between the waking world and the realm beyond wore thin, and where those who walked with open hearts might chance upon wonders, or terrors, depending on the song they carried in their soul. Elowen, wrapped in her fern feather cloak, sang softly as she walked, not with words but with breath and feeling, melodies shaped by moss and morning. The tune was not learned, it had always been within her, like a seed of starlight buried deep beneath her ribs. On the 3rd night, as she rested beneath an old willow whose roots curled like sleeping serpents, she was roused by hoofbeats that made no sound. She opened her eyes and the stars blinked away. Before her stood a figure tall as twilight, robed in dusk-woven cloth, with eyes like pools of still water and antlers that gleamed with the light of other moons. The Antlered King. He bore no crown, for his antlers were his crown, pearled and ancient, growing not upward but outward, like branches of time itself. His face was neither young nor old, either cruel nor kind. It was the face of the forest itself. "Elowen of the Vale," he said, voice deep as distant thunder and soft as ash. "Why do you tread the song path?" She stood slowly, wrapping her cloak around her like a shield of quiet courage. "I seek the first song," she said. "The one the stars sang when the world was made." The Antlered King regarded her. "Few seek it now. Fewer still survive the seeking. I was called. And so were others. Do you know what became of them?" She did not answer, but her silence was not empty. It was the silence of one who listens with all her being. The Antlered King tilted his great head. "Very well, daughter of twilight. If you would find the first song, you must journey into the hollow places, where light forgets its name and echoes walk on 2 legs. Elowen's breath caught, but she nodded. He lifted a hand, long and bark-skinned, and touched her brow. At his touch, her vision twisted. Not painfully, but with a slow unspooling of sight and sense. The world dimmed, and in its place came a vision. A tree whose roots reached through all realms, its branches crowned with burning stars. Beneath it, a gate of bone and silver. Before the gate, a guardian cloaked in silence. Then it was gone. "You must pass the 3 foldings," the king said. "The fold of flesh, the fold of fear, and the fold of forgetting. Only then may you stand before the tree." "And what lies beyond the tree?" she asked. He did not answer. Instead, he gave her a gift, a small stone, smooth and black as onyx, warm to the touch. "This will show you your path. But only in darkness." Elowen bowed low, as one does before river and mountain. When she looked up again, he was gone. The next morning, the woods around her had changed. The air was thicker now, not with damp or fog, but with presence, an unseen watching. The light was no longer golden, but pale and humming. She knew the first of the foldings lay near. She came to a glen where all sound ceased, not even the call of birds or the rustle of leaves dared intrude. In its center stood a pool, dark and perfectly still. Above it arched 3 birches, their trunks impossibly white, their leaves unmoving. She approached and saw her reflection, yet it was not her face that stared back. It was her fears. Her mother's hands, aged and withering, her father silent and lost, the vale in ruins, fire licking the bones of her people. Herself, older, hollow-eyed, alone. This was the fold of flesh, where the weight of mortal life pressed hardest. The stone in her hand warmed, and she clutched it tightly, whispering, "I am not only fear. I am also hope." The reflection trembled. One by one, the images faded. The pool rippled. And she passed. By dusk, the path wound downward into a canyon where no moon could touch. The second folding awaited, the fold of fear. Here the path narrowed, flanked by cliffs of black stone etched with runes that pulsed faintly, like breathing. Elowen descended slowly, but as she did, voices began to stir, soft at first, like distant sobbing, then louder, urgent, hissing. "You are nothing. You will fail. You are alone. Turn back, little leaf." But she pressed on, clutching the stone and singing her wordless song, the same breath melody that had always lived inside her. It pushed back the darkness like a lantern of warmth. The voices screamed, then fell silent. She reached the canyon's end. There, a gate of shadow stood, a doorway not made of wood or stone, but of forgetting. Here began the third folding. The fold of forgetting was the cruelest of all. She stepped through the gate, and was no longer sure of her name. She wandered through a gray meadow where color bled into dust, and time curled in on itself. The sky was neither day nor night, and in the silence, memories slipped like sand between fingers. She remembered her song, but not its name. She remembered her mother's voice, but not her face. Even her own hands looked like strangers. But then, from deep within, she felt it again, that seed of starlight, that ember of longing. And the stone in her pocket glowed once more. She dropped to her knees, pressing her hand to the earth. "I remember," she whispered. "Even if I forget my name, I remember why I walk." And with that, the gray cracked. The sky bloomed blue. Color poured back into the world like wine. And Elowen stood again in the waking world, beyond the three foldings. Ahead, across a field of whispering grasses, stood the tree from her vision, vast, stark-round, and older than all memory. The tree of the first song. Evergreen Tree Chapter 3, Beneath the Stark-Round Tree. The field before her hummed like a harp string caught in the wind. The grass whispered her name with every sway. "Elowen! Elowen!" Not as a summons, but as a remembrance. As if the land itself had awaited her return for 1,000 years. The tree of the first song stood at the center of the field, impossibly vast. Its trunk shimmered with runes older than writing, its bark braided with veins of soft gold and night silver. Its leaves burned like small suns, some blue, some green, some glowing red like embered fire, and above all, from its boughs dangled fruits of light, each the size of a cupped hand, each humming softly as though full of song. Elowen approached, barefoot on dew-dappled earth, heart like a drum in her chest. The tree's roots curled outward in a wide spiral, forming a ring as though it were both temple and threshold. She stepped into the ring, and at once the world seemed to still. No bird called, no wind moved, no time passed. Then a voice spoke, not from above, not from the tree, but from within her, and through her, like a wind moving through reeds. "You have walked the long silence." She stood straight, though her limbs trembled. "I have. You have given memory to the fold of forgetting, breath to the fold of fear, and heart to the fold of flesh. I have. Then speak now your name, not the one given to you by mother or father, but the one you earned beneath star and stone." And suddenly she knew. "Elowen, star listener," she said. The wind stirred. The tree's leaves sang, a low, swelling chorus, not of voices, but of tone, echo, warmth, and time. It was not a song in the way mortals sang, but a shaping of being, notes woven from the birth of wind, the blooming of fire, the slow sorrow of moonlight. Then, before her, the bark of the tree parted, not split, not torn, but opened, like a door that had always been there and simply forgotten how to move. Within the hollow heart of the tree, a spiral staircase wound downward, not made of wood, but of woven memory, each step glowing faintly under her touch. She descended. Deeper and deeper. down into the roots of the world. Beneath the tree, there was no sky. Only a cavern vast and echoing, its walls studded with crystals that pulsed softly, like heartbeat light. In the center of the chamber stood a figure cloaked in stars, with no face but a shifting constellation in the shape of a woman. She did not speak, yet Elowen knew this was the guardian of the first song, the one she had glimpsed in vision. The guardian raised a hand, and in her palm appeared a harp, not of strings and frame, but of light and silence. It hung there, waiting. "You carry song within you," the voice said, soft as candle smoke. "But do you know how to release it?" Elowen stepped forward, hands shaking, and reached for the harp. The moment her fingers brushed it, memory poured through her, not her own, but of stars being born, of oceans forming their first tides, of wolves howling in the first forests of the world. She strummed a single note, and the cavern lit with flame. Not fire, but truth. The truth of all things hidden. Sorrow, beauty, the hush between dying and being born again. The harp answered her, not as an instrument, but as a mirror. She sang. Not with words, but with all she was. Her song held the veil in its green breath, her mother's quiet laughter, her father's soft fluting. It held her fears, her courage, her longing to remember what the world had forgotten. The guardian bowed her head. "You have found it." And as Elowen played, the light grew. The harp dissolved, but the music did not. It had become part of her, woven into her bones, her breath, her footsteps. The guardian stepped aside, revealing a door of stone and flame. "You may now pass through the door of becoming," the voice said. "Few are called, and few across. But you have sung the first song. The world awaits its echo." Elowen stepped forward. Through the door. And the world changed. She stood again in the veil. But it was not the veil she had known. It was older. Brighter. More awake. The trees whispered not only in leaves, but in words. The river sang. The stones hummed with her footsteps. Time moved differently now, for she had brought the song back with her. And with it came remembrance. The people of the vale stirred from their long forgetting. The old stories returned, living, breathing things. The barrows began to bloom, not with moss, but with memory. And Elowen walked among them, not as a seer, nor a queen, but as a song-bearer. Children followed her, asking her to sing. Not lullabies, but the song beneath all songs. And she would sit beneath the elder tree, now in full bloom every season, and play upon a harp they could not see, but always heard. Not all heard the same song. Some heard a mother's whisper. Some the call of home. Some the truth that they were not alone. The antlered king came to her one final time, beneath the winter moon. "You have done well, star listener." She bowed her head. "Is the song now whole again?" He smiled, antlers bright with snow. "It is not a song meant to be whole. It is meant to be shared. Carried. Remembered." And with that, he faded once more. And Elowen remained. Not as a legend, nor a saint, nor a queen of a forgotten realm, but as a gentle voice in the quiet of night, a hush in the wind, a song in the dark, calling all who wandered to remember that they, too, carried the first song, even in silence, even in sleep. Chapter 4: The Echoing Hallow. Though peace settled over the vale like the hush after snowfall, the first song had not finished its weaving. Elowen, now called Star Listener by all who knew her, remained in Callanwyth, dwelling in a cottage grown from living willow. Vines shaped her windows, and blue moss bloomed upon her roof. But though she smiled gently and sang still, her eyes turned often to the east, where the mists never quite lifted. For the first song had not only stirred her own realm, but had awakened sleeping things in other hollows of the world, things older than joy and deeper than sorrow. One night, as frost kissed the meadows and the stars burned low and red, a stranger arrived at the edge of the vale. He bore a cloak of stitched bark and a staff of carved obsidian. His face was thin and worn by many roads, and his eyes flickered like candlelight under storm glass. He called himself Thalen, and he bore news not from the east, nor the south, but from below. "The hallow stirs," he said. "The echo has begun to walk." Elowen nodded, for she had dreamt of such things. "What form does it take?" Thalen frowned. "None. And many. It moves like breath through sleeping minds. It wears the faces of forgotten kin. It speaks in voices that never truly died." He reached into his satchel and drew forth a stone, pale and jagged like moonbone. "It was found in the city of Nurhaleth. The dwellers below say it sang once, but now it only listens. It listens, and remembers." Elowen took the stone gently, and the moment her fingers touched it, her breath caught. Inside the stone were voices, not heard, but felt. Longing voices. Lost voices. Unanchored echoes. The echoing hallow. She whispered. "A hollow place where songs go to die." Thalen's face darkened. Or worse, where songs are trapped. Half-formed. Unfinished. Hungering to be remembered, but unable to return. That night, Elowen sat by her hearth, staring into the flickering fire. The stone pulsed faintly beside her, a pale rhythm against the wood grain. She sang softly, not a full song, but a hum of memory and searching. And in the flames she saw a vision. A vast cavern shaped like a bell turned upside down, where shadows drifted like smoke and voices circled endlessly, crying out in fragments. Still waiting. Never finished. Please, just once more. There was a door there. No frame, no handle, only a veil of black light, and behind it, a sound like breathing that did not stop. She awoke with tears on her cheeks. By first light, she knew what must be done. "Elowen," Thalen warned. "This path leads far from sunlight. The hallow is not a place, but a forgetting. It consumes what is half-remembered and feeds upon it. What you rescue might not wish to return, and what you leave behind may never come again." But Elowen only placed the pale stone in a pouch over her heart, and took up her fern-feather cloak once more. "I have some once to wake the sleeping," she said. "Now I must sing to calm the restless." The journey to the hallow was not across mountains or seas, it was through the wending deep, where the earth folds upon itself and dreams sink into stone. They passed beneath the ruins of Selneth, where vines grew through broken temples and whisper moths danced through dust. They crossed the root roads, tunnels of winding tree roots, far below the oldest forests, where it is said the trees converse in slow tongues. They passed beneath the river Therion, whose waters ran above them like sky, held aloft by magic forgotten even by the stars. In the silence of those deep places, Elowen heard the echo. Soft at first, but growing. "My name, do you remember?" I almost sang. I was almost real. Thalen guided her by rune and stone, though his steps slowed the deeper they went. "The hallow is not evil," he said once. "Only unmoored. It is what happens when songs die before they are sung." On the 9th night, they reached the threshold. The cavern was vast and dimly lit by pools of silver light. No walls could be seen, only distance, and shadow, and the rising hum of forgotten melodies. And there, in the center, the echoing hallow pulsed. It looked like a tree made of air and ash. Its branches twisted without form, its roots rose like question marks, and from every angle it appeared different, like memory, like dream, like grief. And around it circled the echoes. Not people. Not quite. Shapes of thought. Flickers of would-be beings, trapped in stories that had never found an ending. They murmured without mouths. Cried without tears. Begged to be finished. To be sung. To be real. Elowen stepped forward. At once, the echoes swirled toward her. One showed her the image of a child lost at sea, never named. Another, a song begun by a dying bard, cut short by silence. Another, a mother's lullaby never finished before the fire took her home. Each echo reached into her, not maliciously, but desperately. Pulling at her memories, her breath, herself. "Elowen!" Thalen called out. "They'll unmake you if you listen too long!" But she did not pull away. she opened her arms and sang. Not one song, but many. Each line she wove from the fragments offered to her. She gave endings to what had never ended, names to those unnamed, love to those unloved. And with each note, an echo faded, not into death, but into peace, into rest, into a place in the song. Thalen watched as the cavern brightened, each departing echo leaving behind a thread of gold light that laced through the air like a tapestry. But the tree of echoes remained. It did not move. It listened. Then it spoke. Not in sound, but in resonance. You would finish all songs? It asked, not accusing, but curious. No, Elowen replied. Only help them find their way. The tree bent low, and a seed dropped from its form, small, black, and warm as a heartbeat. For the day the song falters again, it said. Plant this where silence reigns. And then, like mist, the halo unraveled. The echoes faded. The chamber darkened. And the way home opened once more. When they returned to the surface, many days had passed. The sun seemed brighter, the air clearer. Even the birds sang differently. Elowen carried the seed of echoes in a pouch of soft leather. Not to be used lightly, but for when the world forgets again. And somewhere, in a far-off land, a child dreamt of a woman with antlers of stars and a harp of light, and began to sing. Would you like to continue to Chapter 5, The Hollow Choir, next? The tale grows broader, deeper, and soon, others will join the chorus. Chapter 5, The Hollow Choir. There came a winter to Callanwith unlike any before. It did not howl or rage. It came quietly, like dust upon old shelves, and it stayed. The sky turned the color of bruised parchment. Snow fell in perfect silence. Time slowed, and even the fire and hearth seemed reluctant to crackle. This was not a natural winter. The vale, which once thrummed with the slow breath of trees and song, had gone still. Too still. Children spoke in hushed voices, and the elder tree dropped its blossoms early. Elowen knew what it was before it was spoken aloud. It was the silencing. Not death. Not cold. But an erasure. It began in the high village of Renthame, where a boy woke to find his voice gone. Not stolen, not hoarse, simply forgotten. The notes of his favorite song no longer rose to meet his lips. His mother wept, but not with sound. By dusk, the entire village had fallen mute. Not by spell or wound, but by some unseen, consuming hush. Elowen went to them. She sang softly, a melody shaped of comfort, drawing upon the echoes she had once freed in the hallow. But her notes faltered in Renthame's air, as though the very sky swallowed them whole. And that was when she heard them. Low, distant, like a song just beneath the skin of the world. A choir, not beautiful, but aching. Thin and brittle, like wind through bones. The hollow choir. That night, as she sat beneath the stars with the seed of echoes in her lap, she turned to Thalen, who had not left her side since the journey below. The choir is not born of silence, she said. It is born of unfinished harmony. Voices that were never meant to be alone. Thalen nodded. And yet they sing. For now. Together they climbed to the heights of the singing cliffs, a place where wind once played melodies upon the stone, where flutes carved into the rock by ancient hands whispered songs older than writing. Now nothing sang there. The flutes had ceased. Not broken, but stilled. The wind had fled. And in that silence they heard the hollow choir more clearly. It was near. And it was growing. In dreams that night, Elowen wandered a barren plain of ash and snow. There stood the choir, not as people, but as presences, each one a shade woven from broken notes. Some still held shapes of those they once were. Minstrels, poets, story-weavers, children who had begun to hum but never finished their tune. They did not weep. They sang. A droning dirge without rhythm, without rest. Each voice frayed at the edge, unraveling like cloth too long held by wind. She approached one, a girl no older than 10, her mouth open but voice unmade. Did you forget your song? Elowen asked gently. The girl shook her head. No one ever listened, she said. So it stopped. When Elowen woke, she wept, not for sorrow, but for the terrible beauty of it. The choir was not malicious. It was a lament, for every note unheard, every tale dismissed, every story too small to matter. She knew what must be done. She returned to Renthame and asked the villagers to gather, though they could no longer speak. She took her harp of silence and memory, the one shaped within the tree, and placed the seed of echoes at its base. Then she sang. But not alone. She sang for those who could not. She sang with them. One by one they joined. Not with voices, but with breath, with heartbeat, with the rhythm of footfall and hand upon chest. The children beat small drums. The elders clapped slowly, eyes wide with memory. And the seed at her feet glowed. Then split. From it grew a tree, swift and strange, a thin silver sapling with branches like tuning forks, leaves shaped like ears. And from it came harmony. Not perfection, but joining. The hollow choir hesitated. Their dirge faltered. The notes thinned, stretched, and then, one by one, began to shift. The song changed, became fuller, warmer. For the first time, Elowen heard their names. Not as words, but as sound made real. They were not forgotten. They were found. The choir, now no longer hollow, scattered like seeds on the wind, each voice planting itself in the minds of those ready to listen. In distant corners of the world, small children began to hum songs they had never been taught. Old storytellers awoke from dreams with tales they had never known. Painters found themselves sketching faces that history had lost. The song was returning. Not from above, nor from the deep, but from the broken spaces between. And Elowen? She remained. At the base of the new tree, called listenroot by the people, she tended the earth, and welcomed all who came to remember. For the world was changing. A second song was rising. Not a first song of beginnings, but a joining song, born of endings healed. And yet far to the north, beyond the frost rivers and the cliffs of Candleglass, something stirred. Not song, but silence sharpened into blade. And it did not seek harmony, only stillness. Forever. Chapter 6. The Sleepless Silence. Far to the north, beyond the memory of wind and the echo of known lands, there lies a region charted on no map, spoken of only in the oldest tongues, those muttered by embers and remembered by stone. They call it Thurngoleth, the land without murmur. A place not merely quiet, but hollowed, stripped of sound as if the very breath of the world had been stolen and kept in a jar of frost and forgetting. It was once a kingdom, or so say the frost runes etched upon the bones of glacial ruins. But what it ruled, and why it fell, no one now remembers, not even the stars above it, which flicker there more dimly than elsewhere in the sky. And from its heart now comes a new force, faceless and cold, known only as the Sleepless Silence. It began as a windless breath on the edge of the northern ice fields. Travelers who passed near the boundary of Thurngoleth reported no immediate dread, only a sense of being unmoored, as if thought became fog, and speech turned to chalk in the mouth. Words dissolved before utterance. And worse, once left, many found that they could not recall what had happened. Even their memories fell silent. And from this silence it grew. It did not hunger. It did not hate. It simply erased. In Calmingnarration, as the listenroot tree stretched gently skyward, Elowen sat with a bowl of black ink, painting the shapes of songs upon long leaves. Each stroke curved with care, a memory, a name, a breath caught in stillness. The leaves would be taken to the barrows, placed on the stones of the sleeping, so that their songs would not be forgotten. But as she dipped her brush once more, her hand trembled. She blinked, and forgot the name she had just written. A sudden chill moved through her bones. She looked to Thalen, seated across from her. "Did you?" He nodded. "I felt it too." They both turned their eyes northward. And there, on the horizon, where no mist had touched in many years, a faint graying of the sky began to bloom. A quiet not of sleep, but of absence. That evening, beneath the elder tree, Elowen played her harp, but no birds gathered, no foxes crept close. Even the wind had wandered off. "The sleepless silence," whispered Thalen. "It walks now. Not a being. Not quite. More like a wound the world cannot close. But wounds can be bound," Elowen replied, eyes shining with starlight. "If you remember how they were made." She gathered the remnants of the hollow choir, the echoes who had chosen to remain, and asked them to sing once more. Not loudly, but truly. Their voices, like threads of warm breath, wove into the sky. She sent them out across the land, to the ancient listening stones, to the ruined trees, to the rivers who still carried dreams. "Find the source," she told them. "Find what sleeps at the heart of the silence." And one returned. Its voice was broken, frayed like a kite lost to wind. Beneath the ice-crowned monastery, it whispered, lies the last mouth. Elowen frowned. What is the last mouth? But the echo could not answer. Its song had vanished. Not ended. Erased. The ice-crowned monastery. A place whispered of only in the darkest songs of the deep wardens. Those ancient caretakers of memory who reside in the city of Ilurin, beneath the sea of glass. Elowen and Thalen made for Ilurin at once. Through wind-choked passes they rode, across the moonless marshes and into the glimmering tunnels of the deep warden's realm. Ilurin was a city of mirrored halls and shadowlight, where memory was kept not in books, but in flames, each fire a memory shaped and remembered aloud each dusk by the tellers. They were not pleased to see Elowen. "You meddled with echoes." Chapter 7. The Night Sun Crown. The winds had stilled. The silence had receded. And yet Elowen knew, the world was not yet at peace. The first song had returned. The hollow choir had been heard. Even Yuvareth, the sleepless silence, had quieted beneath snow and stone. But something deeper stirred now, not in soil or dream, but in the sky. Each night, the stars flickered differently. Not dimmer, but off-key, like a harp string drawn too tight. The constellations shifted, if only slightly. The star-watchers of Tharnan called them tremors of heaven. The elders of Ilurin whispered of the night crown, a celestial weave long vanished, whose return meant the unbinding of the sky script. And in Callanwith, the elder tree began to hum in the dark hours. Low, lonely, and afraid. One moonless night, Elowen stood beneath that tree, alone but for her breath. The wind had gone quiet, not in dread, but in reverence. And above, the stars blinked in strange rhythms. Then came the voice. Not from earth nor dream, but from above. A chorus in one. It did not speak words. It sang them. But not in language Elowen knew. Still, she understood. The crown has been found. But not worn. At dawn, a visitor arrived from across the sea. Her name was Mirian of the Starborn, and her eyes shone like polished obsidian. She bore a cloak made of nebula thread, and in her hand she carried a scroll sealed with a ring of star metal. "A shadow moves across the void," she said. "The night crown sings again. But no one remains to answer." "What is the crown?" Elowen asked. "Not a jewel," Mirian replied. "Not a title. It is a chord, a harmony of stars that once ruled the sky. A pattern that held night in balance. It was lost in the shattering of eons. Now, something stirs it back." Elowen touched the harp upon her back. "Is it song?" "It is the memory of song," Mirian said. "But too long forgotten. If no voice joins it, it may become silence again. But this time, across the heavens." So Elowen journeyed with Mirian, first across the Sea of Lament, where the water wept for names never spoken, then into the Isles of Cloudstone, where sky touched land and memory hung like fog. There, in the Temple of the Skyborn, they stood beneath the dome of obsidian crystal. And there they saw it. The night sun crown. Not a thing, but a shape. A star harmony that pulsed across the heavens in 7 lights, each a note. Each a story. But the harmony was cracked. 2 notes were missing. One dimmed. One broken. They are not stars, Miriam whispered. They are souls. Elowen closed her eyes, then opened them to the sky. I have heard these voices before. And she had. In the fold of forgetting. In the sleepless silence. In the breath of the hollow choir. They were the notes of those who chose not to sing. Those who were never sung back. And unless she found them, the crown would fall incomplete. And with it, the balance of night. They returned to Callanwyth, and beneath the elder tree, Elowen lit 7 candles. 6 burned with steady flame. The 7th flickered. Then failed. That is the soul yet to be remembered, she said. Then we must find it, Miriam replied. Their journey took them to the place where stars fall, the Emberdown crater, deep in the western ranges, where old Star Meadow burned with soft light among glassy stone. There they met the veiled starkeepers, cloaked in night silk and silence. They spoke little, but they led Elowen to a shard buried in the crater's heart. A fallen tone. A forgotten note. Still warm. Still waiting. And it sang, not in words but in grief. It had once been a guardian of the night-sung crown. Its name was Therill, the 5th light, the keeper of dissonance. But it had broken. Not by force, but by sorrow. It had believed itself unworthy of harmony. A voice that did not belong. And so it fell. Elowen knelt before the shard, and sang not of joy or memory, but of not belonging, of silence in crowded halls, of the sound a soul makes when it hides its voice for too long. And Therill wept. The shard glowed, and rose. The 6th flame returned, and with it, the harmony almost whole. Only one light remained to be found. But it did not burn in sky or stone. It burned within. Elowen stood alone again beneath the stars, and realized she was the 7th, not by fate, not by birth, but by choice. For every soul who chooses to sing the broken into being becomes part of the crown, not as ruler, but as resonance. The stars above shifted. The 7 lights aligned. A ring of fire across the firmament. And the heavens sang once more. Not loudly, but truly. The night-sung crown had returned. And Elowen, voice trembling, whispered into the vast dark. Let there be song. Chapter 8. The Shattered Lullaby. After the night-sung crown was restored to the sky, a hush unlike any before settled over the world. It was not fear, nor the calm of peace, but the stillness before a revelation. Every child in the vale dreamt of stars humming in slow, patient rhythm. In distant kingdoms, shepherds spoke of flocks lying down to listen. In Ilorin, the deep wardens stirred from their long recitations and whispered, It is almost time. For the crown had returned, but its harmony was not yet whole. One note trembled still. The note of the lullaby unfinished. The lullaby that, in the time before time, had once sung a god to sleep, and failed. Elowen first heard it on a cold twilight beneath the elder tree. Not with ears, but in her bones. A fragment. Half a verse. A broken hum echoing from the edge of the sky. It came as a memory, and yet she knew it was older than memory. Older than stars. She fell to her knees, and wept. Not for sorrow, but for the beauty that never finished becoming. Miriam, now called Starweaver among the Skyborn, found her hours later. You heard it, she said. Elowen nodded. The shattered lullaby, Miriam whispered. The last unbound harmony. Elowen looked up. Who began it? No one knows, Miriam said. Only that it was meant to quiet the sleepless one. The silence? Elowen asked. No, Miriam replied, her voice barely audible. Older than silence. Older than night itself. In the high spires of the astral archive, hidden beyond the frost ring of the world, there lies a book with no words. Only a single humming line that moves across blank pages. The line sings, gently and forever, shifting slightly with each reader. They call it the song that waits. Elowen traveled there with Miriam, sailing aboard a vessel made of light glass and woven breeze, passing through the veil of black aurora. The voyage was slow, for the stars dimmed as they neared the archive, as though bowing. And when they arrived, the archivars greeted them with bowed heads. Not in reverence. In mourning. "We failed to finish it," one whispered. "The lullaby?" "Yes." It was sung in the first breath, carried across the heavens. But one verse was never found. And the sleepless one did not fall. "Who is it?" Elowen asked. But they would not say. Only pointed to the book of the waiting line. She opened it. And the hum moved through her like time remembering itself. And then, one note flickered. A gap. An aching pause. She reached for it. And heard a voice. Not a word. Not a song. A voice. It spoke without form. It felt without shape. It was the sleepless one. And it was not evil. Only awake. And in agony. Endless awareness. Eternal presence. And nothing to anchor it. Elowen trembled. "This is why we sleep," she whispered. "To forget pain. To rest. From remembering everything. The sleepless one had never slept. And so it suffered. Elowen stepped back from the book. "There is only one way," she said. Marian bowed her head. "You must finish the lullaby." "But I do not know it." "You do," Marian replied. "Not in your mind. In your heart. You carry the echoes of all who could not finish their songs. You remember what the stars have lost." Elowen closed her eyes. And she sang. Not loudly. Not perfectly. But truthfully. She sang of sleep. Not as escape. But as healing. She sang of stars who wept alone. Of voices who dared to rest. Of the courage to let go. And as she sang, the blank pages of the book glowed. The hum deepened. The line closed. The verse was whole. And far beyond the sky, in a realm of unshaped being, the sleepless one sighed. Once. A long breath. And slept. The world did not change at once. But the stars blinked softer. The wind grew warmer. Even time, for a moment, seemed to pause and smile. The lullaby, now whole, echoed through all things. And the song, ancient and ever new, was complete. For now. Elowen stood once more beneath the elder tree. A child approached her, eyes bright with dreams. "Will there be another song?" they asked. Elowen smiled. "There is always another song." And she began to hum. Softly. So softly. That sleep crept gently into the world once more. Understood. Chapter 9 will now serve as the penultimate chapter, drawing together many threads of the tale, preparing for the final culmination in Chapter 10. Let us now continue, where unmade things stir and the loom of story quivers beneath waiting hands. New Moon Chapter 9, The Weavers of the Unmade. In the hush that followed the completion of the shattered lullaby, the world breathed, not merely air, but memory, and song, and story. The night sun crown shimmered gently each dusk, no longer pulsing with hunger or absence, but glowing with steadied rhythm. Dreams came easier to those who had once feared the dark. And even the deep barrows of the hollow choir murmured in peace, like children sighing in sleep. But not all songs, Elowen knew, seek to be finished. Some are born in the cracks between moments. Some are unmade by choice. And deep beneath the world, beneath even the roots of the listenroot tree, a gathering stirred. Not of villains. Not of monsters. But of possibilities. They were known to the oldest flamekeepers as the unmade. Stories never told. Lives never chosen. Songs begun and then refused. Not because they were unworthy, but because they feared being shaped. To become real is to risk sorrow. To be named is to lose mystery. The unmade knew this. And so they gathered, hiding from the song. Until now. Now that the world sang again. They stirred. Not in malice, but in resistance. It began with small forgettings. A lantern with no wick. A village bell that never rang. though none remembered placing it. Footprints leading nowhere, across snow that melted in warm sun. Elowen noticed the signs. Not as alarm, but as absence that refused fullness. The weavers of the unmade were moving. And they were close. One morning, beneath the first bloom of frost petals, she found a child at the edge of the vale. Barefoot. Watching the world without blinking. Elowen approached gently. "What is your name?" The child blinked once. And replied, "I haven't chosen one." Elowen felt a cold slip around her heart. "What do you seek?" "A place where stories do not end." That night, she met with Miriam beneath the elder tree. "We are reaching the edge of story," Elowen said. "The weavers, they've watched the song come alive. And now they fear its shape. They wish to remain formless? No. They wish to remain free." Miriam nodded slowly. "But the world itself is shaped by song. Without it, unbeing spreads," Elowen whispered. "Not death. Not silence. But unweaving. The undoing of meaning itself." And so she descended once more, beyond the folded veins of the earth, past the now quiet chambers of the echoing hollow, into the luminous deep. A realm where no pattern held. Where sky and stone flickered. Where thought unraveled before it could become. And there they were. The unmade. Figures of near form, some almost human, some drifting like cloaked shadows in mist. Some burned like lanterns without flame. Others shimmered like forgotten reflections. And in the center the weavers. Tall. Still. Unmoving. Watching. Waiting. "We know you," one whispered, not with voice, but presence. "You are the listener," said another. "The giver of endings. The shaper of return." Elowen stepped forward. "I am the rememberer." The weavers bowed. "But will you remember us?" one asked. "If you choose to be remembered." And the deep shook. The eldest of the weavers stepped forward. Its body was a cloak of wind. Its face a space where no face had ever been. "I was once a beginning," it said. "But I feared what I might become. So I unchose myself." "You still exist," Elowen whispered. "I do. But barely. And now, I do not know whether I should return." Elowen reached out, not with hand, but with story. She sang not a song of command, but an invitation. "To be sung is not to be caged," she said. "It is to be known, and to know yourself." And the weavers trembled. One by one, the unmade began to shimmer. Some stepped forward, hesitantly, into the light of Elowen's song. They took form, not final, but willing. A child of air and name. A wanderer shaped of smoke, now flesh. A song once whispered in no tongue, now sung aloud for the first time. But not all chose to come. And Elowen did not force them. "For to sing is not a command," she said. "It is a joining." As she rose from the luminous deep, she carried with her not a relic, nor a shard, but a silence that had chosen sound. A small chorus of once unmade, who now stepped into the world with wonder. They remembered themselves. And in so doing, they gave others permission to be. The world brightened subtly. Colors deepened. Storms sang as they passed. The breath of trees became richer. Because now the song was not just remembered. It was chosen. By all who joined it. And as Elowen walked again beneath the elder tree, she looked upward at the night sun crown. It shimmered once. Then dimmed slightly. In peace. Not in warning. For the final verse was coming. One last song. And its singer already walked the path. Chapter 10, The Final Thread. The wind that swept through Callanworth in the days after the unmade's return carried no chill. It was not storm nor omen, but a gathering, a summoning. The world itself had begun to hum, a deep, slow resonance like a loom finishing its last weave. The stars blinked in synchrony with unseen rhythms. Rivers carved old songs into new paths. Trees leaned toward the sky as if reaching for a note long remembered but never sung aloud. And Elowen knew. The song was nearly whole. not because it had grown louder, but because it was ready to end. Endings, she had learned, were not vanishing. They were closing, the drawing of thread through fabric, the final word in a remembered letter. The last breath of a lullaby. She felt it in her hands, in her steps, even in her voice, which had begun to fade, not from wear, but because she had given so much of it away. She no longer needed to speak to be heard. Elowen was now part of the song. It was Syria, now grown to the edge of womanhood, who brought the message. "There is a place at the world's rim," she said, "where even echoes dare not go. A cliff without name. A thread hangs there, waiting." Elowen rose. Her cloak of fern and memory shimmered in the golden light. "I must go alone." Syria nodded. "I know. But when you go, take this." She held out a single leaf. The first leaf grown from the listenroot tree. Upon it, the names of every echo Elowen had sung into being had been inscribed. Tiny, luminous runes woven with light, etched with the reverence of fireflies. Elowen placed it over her heart. And walked. Her journey was not long, for the world had shifted. Roads opened for her. Mountains bowed. Even time bent slightly, easing her steps. And so she came, at last, to the cliff of the final thread. There was no railing. No guardian. Only space, and wind, and the faintest glimmer of something suspended before the sky. A single thread of gold. Barely visible. Trembling. Unwoven. Unclaimed. Waiting. Elowen stood before it. And remembered. She remembered the wishing pool. The way the wind had called her name. She remembered the hollow choir. The broken voices that longed only to be heard. She remembered Yuvareth, the sleepless silence, aching to be understood. She remembered the stars, the night crown, the lullaby. She remembered the unmade. And Syria, who had once been just an echo. She remembered herself. And how far she had come. And then she reached for the thread. Not to pull it. Not to bind it. But to join it. She placed her fingers gently against it. And sang. The final note was not loud. It was not high nor deep. It was not a crescendo. It was a resting place. A sound that knew all others. And made peace with them. As she sang, the thread shimmered, wove itself around her voice, and then vanished, not in erasure, but in completion. And the world was quiet, truly quiet, for just a moment. Then came the breath, the next one, the one that always follows the last verse of a lullaby, a breath of new beginning, not Elowen's, but the world's. No one ever saw her again, but they heard her. In lullabies sung to children beneath rustling trees. In the hush before rain. In the hush after. In the way the stars blinked, just once, like an old friend winking goodnight. The world did not end. It became. Because the song was sung. The story told. And the final thread drawn. Crescent moon epilogue. In Calmingnarration, Syria tended the listenroot tree, now taller than any tower, its roots spreading through story and stone. Children came from every corner of the realm to listen. Not to be taught, but to remember. Not just their names, but who they might become. And every so often, when the wind was right and the stars were listening, they heard a song. Soft. Complete. And they smiled. For Elowen had not vanished. She had simply joined the weave. The end.